The writer's strike is over, and it keeps reminding me of this quote from Dr. King in 1967, where he explains that the next day, the SEAL test people were talking nice. They were very humble. What is the context of this, and what does it have to do with the writer's strike? For a bit of context, in the 60s, Mr. Sealtest was a man who owned a company, a dairy company, and they were not hiring enough black workers. So Dr. King and the people that he was working with approached him and said, hey, you should probably hire more black workers. And he said, no. So what they did was they organized a picket line. They got together and they exercised the collective economic power that human people have when they work together, and they forced him to change. It was only after the threat of economic harm to his company that he finally was willing to come to the negotiating table. And the next day, the Sealtest people were talking nice. Part of why I like this is because we often think that it is our heart and our morals and our internal conviction that push us to do things. And we like to think that way because we believe in free will and all these other reasons that we can talk about in other videos. But part of what Dr. King proves in this example, and part of what has been proven by the writer's strike, is that often it is the external world that pressures our actions. It is not the heart that moves our actions. It is our actions that move our heart. This might be called, referred to as something called virtue ethics, but that's not a virtue ethics. You probably think that's too simple of a way to explain it. But virtue ethics is a way of thinking that it's hard to actually know what is good. So train yourself in virtues, train yourself in good behaviors, train yourself in things that you think of as morally good, and that will turn your heart good over time. The final other example that I want to talk about is John Green and the Nervitaria's success over major pharmaceutical companies. Tuberculosis kills a lot of people every year, an unconscionable number of people, considering the fact that it is a preventable disease. John Green and his group of internet supporters got together and pressured this company. Pressured the company to say, hey, you are doing an immoral and illegal thing. And those people, they did not make that choice to start selling these tuberculosis tests out of the kindness of their hearts. They made that choice because they were being publicly pressured. Part of me wonders then what happens if we sort of zoom out. That's another video, sorry, Copernican Revolution is another video. If we zoom out and we apply this concept broader, to me it would seem that we cannot rely on the benevolence of billionaires to get good things done in society. There's a massive political division. We're all aware of it. We all feel it every day. But at present, for whatever dice rolling reason, and by whatever dice rolling reason, I mean people like Rupert Murdoch spend billions of dollars to own media companies that, convince people that billionaires are the saviors of the world, and people like Elon Musk spend billions of dollars to buy media companies like Twitter to convince people that billionaires are what is good for the world. But what are they doing with their money except protecting it? If the writer's strike and the Mr. Sealtest milk incident and the tuberculosis versus John Green incident have taught us anything, it is that we cannot rely on the benevolence of the powerful. We simply must band together and recognize our collective power and take it from them. Not necessarily violently, but we still must take it from them. To me, this principle that the powerful must not be trusted to regulate themselves, and that we must take power from the ruling classes, is one of the central founding concepts of the American Revolution, at least in the mythology that we teach it to ourselves with. Throw the tea in the harbor, the power belongs to the people. And yet, when it comes to the contemporary political debates, as soon as we start to claim that power away from the aristocratic class, the corporate class, the political class, all of the sudden, there are massive forces of information that are pushing for, no, actually the billionaires, those are the ones that really help us the most. We call it a lot of things. We call it job creation, we call it this, we call it that. I call it extortion, and the union is the only way to push back, to recognize the collective action, and to take the power back. That felt like sort of an anemic ending. Let's get a better quote. We'll pull one from Where Do We Go From Here, one of my favorite speeches by Dr. King, and this is one of my favorite quotes within on page 185. You can get this book on my reading list. Now, a lot of us are preachers, and all of us have our moral convictions and concerns, and so often we have problems with power. There is nothing wrong with power if power is used correctly. You see, what happened is that some of our philosophers got off base. And here's where he goes into an analysis of how Christians misunderstand Nietzsche, and they contrast love and power. He says power and love are opposites, but power and love are not opposites. I can break that down in more details if you want. Here's the end quote. He says, "Now, we have got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic."